Before that, just a quick round of introductions. I just told about me. I'm Avinash Desiredi, Senior Solutions Architect at Mirantis, and I do everything related to Kubernetes to help customers like onboard and succeed with their Kubernetes journey. Johnathan, would you like to go next to give a quick introduction about yourself, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Avinash. Great to be here. I'm Johnathan. I'm the VP Marketing and BizDev for ARMO. ARMO is the company behind Kubescape, a very interesting Kubernetes security open source solution that, by the way, today we celebrate 1 year anniversary to Kubescape. We launched it exactly 1 year ago. So great to be here. And thank you very much, Avinash, for inviting us.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnathan. Amir, would you like to tell a little bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah, so again, it's great to be here. And I'm Amir. I'm working with Johnathan in ARMO. I'm a developer in the team for a few months now. That's about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's dive in.
Just to mention, Amir is the one responsible for integrating Kubescape into Lens. So
right.
Awesome.
That's the reason I'm here.
Yeah, that's why you're here. And if there is any issue or problem, Amir is your person to talk with.
Yep, this is the time. Like during the session, please feel free to use the Q&A section and also the chat window to post any questions that you might have related to Lens or Kubescape. So the Q&A and then the chat windows are open. Please feel free to let us know your thoughts around these topics and questions as well. So today we're going to talk about like how managing Kubernetes security using Kubescape and Lens. And here is like the quick agenda of what we are going to look at. I'm just going to like talk about the Lens platform, and then for the folks like some of the folks over here are familiar with Lens, but there are like several others who are not familiar with Lens. So I'm just going to do a quick demo to showcase what Lens is and how it simplifies the way developers or SREs will interact with the Kubernetes cluster. From there, we're going to talk about the Kubernetes security and an introduction to Kubescape, and we'll dive into the extension, like the Lens Kubescape extension, which simplifies the way you use Kubescape and then the way you interact with Kubernetes cluster seamlessly. And Q&A, we will get through the questions at the end and also like throughout the session. So don't wait to post the questions till the end of the session. Okay, with that. So working with Kubernetes is challenging. Initially, the initial phases, like when the Kubernetes got released, in order to build a Kubernetes cluster, it was extremely challenging. But thanks to a lot of cloud providers and different vendors out there who simplified the way Kubernetes cluster can be deployed. Nowadays, we can deploy it using a simple command like a minikube start to launch a Kubernetes cluster on a development environment, or we have like Docker desktop, we have Lens where you can like start and stop a Kubernetes cluster, and there are different cloud providers where you can like bring up a cluster with a click of a button. So this is like from the operations side, like the Kubernetes, like building a Kubernetes cluster is simplified, but working with different objects in the Kubernetes cluster is still complex, because we have to be familiar with kubectl, and there are hundreds of resources that are available in Kubernetes to work with. Like where in order to like deploy a simple pod, we need to like refer to the documentation for all the available options, and then use a text editor to build the configuration file, and from there run a kubectl command to deploy the application into the Kubernetes cluster. And in order to monitor the state of the application, we need to run even many more commands or make use of external dashboards to look at what is happening inside the cluster. So it is complicated for a developer to wrap around like what is happening just to get a simple application up and running. So this particular challenge is addressed with the help of Lens. What Lens does is it is a desktop application that is deployed either on Linux, Mac, or Windows, and it abstracts the way you use kubectl and provides a nice graphical interface. And we will be looking at like different features of Lens, which helps you to interact with Kubernetes cluster seamlessly. And it's not the growth of Lens is been organic, and like the recent study that we have done internally showcased that the developers are saving a lot of time. Like it is not only like reducing the complexity on how you interact with Kubernetes cluster, but in terms of the overall time that you spend in terms of troubleshooting an application or working in your entire development workflow, it saves approximately 8 hours per week. So that's like the power of Lens to simplify the way you interact with Kubernetes cluster and focus on your business. Focus more on your business. So here is like a quick overview of like the features. I'm gonna like dive into like a demo instead of like spending too much time over here. But what it does is it integrates seamlessly with your development workflow, where you have like a source code IDE or like a different terminal tools where you are using Git, like Docker Desktop or Minikube, or like CI/CD tools. What Lens seamlessly integrates with your development workflow to in order to interact with Kubernetes clusters, like to deploy or to scan, to observe what is happening, and to test your application or like troubleshoot even further. It does not. It works with any Kubernetes environment like GKE, MKE, Rancher, or OpenShift, any clusters. It is not restricted to like specific Kubernetes environments. And the same thing goes on the operations side. Like operations team can quickly manage resources on the cluster, look at like the events, like manage lifecycle and troubleshoot very quickly and easily. And I'll get into the demo where those features are showcased instead of just me talking about these features. Now, without any delay, I'm gonna like jump into a demo. So this is how Lens looks like. So all the clusters that are available are displayed here. So these clusters are like Lens uses the kube configuration file, which is the standard configuration or like the representation that is used by the kubectl command to interact with any Kubernetes cluster. So all these configuration files, like once they are available locally in my machine, they are automatically detected by Lens and then showcased here. If there is a new configuration file not in the default directory, then we can simply sync the kubeconfig file from the specific directory by clicking the add button, or we can quickly add the kubeconfig file directly within Lens. So once the kubeconfig file is added to it, we can connect, the cluster will appear here, and then we can connect directly to the cluster. So to start with, I'm going to connect to one of the clusters that I have called MC1, and this is one of like the nice feature, like in any organization when we have multiple clusters in a single organization. I have not seen like a single organization that uses only one Kubernetes cluster. There are like different environments like dev, test, prod, or there are sometimes like multiple dev clusters or multiple prod clusters as well. So if we are like accessing like through command line, managing those clusters will become cumbersome. But using Lens, we can quickly switch between clusters directly from within Lens. So whatever like the cluster that we wanted to interact with, we can just like use a click of a button to switch to that cluster and then interact with it. Usually that happens by running a kubectl command, which is like a long string, and we have to like open the terminal and then run a command to switch to that particular context. And once I'm in this particular cluster, I can look at different objects and also go through the different configurations. What is happening in the cluster? For example, I can just look at like I have like 3 nodes that I'm using to run this particular cluster. And if I just like switch to the workloads, I have like several workloads that are running. So these are just within a single namespace. But if I filter through all the namespaces, there are several pods that are running where I get a quick summary of what is happening in the cluster. And a user can quickly deploy a pod. I can just make use of like the create resource button to quickly create a deployment or any type of object. Usually when we are working through the command line, we need to identify the type of object that we wanted to create. And also I'm just going to create a deployment here. And in order to, and we have to like start writing these YAML file, maybe by copying the syntax or the snippet from the documentation or from any other old references that you might have, and then start deploying this application. In this case, I'm going to just deploy this particular application in the default namespace. I think even I have. I'm going to deploy it in this foo namespace with an incorrect image name. So when I deploy it, it's going to deploy the 3 replicas of Nginx deployment inside the default namespace. This got deployed in the default namespace. I need to switch to default in here. And I can just filter through these particular images, and I can quickly say like the Nginx deployment got created just a few minutes ago, and I see there's an error with the image that has been pulled. Usually when we are like interacting with command line, this is going to be, we have to like run multiple commands to make sure our deployment is successful. So this particular complexity is minimized, or this overhead is minimized with the help of Lens. Now, in order to fix this particular application, the deployment, I'm just going to quickly access this deployment, edit its configuration, and fix the image name that I've used. Nginx, save and close, and we'll see this particular pod. The pods that belongs to this Nginx deployment will be recreated, and they will be up and running. So this is what we have. And this is just a quick example of like deployments, but similar things can be done with deployments where we can create multiple resources, etc. One other common task that is done by like developers or like mainly SREs is SSHing into these nodes in case of in terms of doing advanced troubleshooting. Usually you have to like switch to different terminals or different terminals to perform SSH, but we can quickly do a direct SSH into these nodes directly from within Lens by clicking exec into shell. So this will give me access to the node shell with my default with the access that I have on these nodes. So I can perform all the necessary operations like right from here, and then once I'm done, I can just close this window to exit this particular session. One other thing is like when I'm working with multiple clusters, like for example, here I have Lens desktop cube and then the MK cluster. Both of them are running on different versions of Kubernetes, and also in order to interact or create objects in this MC1 cluster, I can just click on this button and then start interacting with it. And the kubectl, the kubectl is a command line tool that we interact with the Kubernetes cluster. But what Lens does is it does not take away the power of using kubectl command line, kubectl or the command line functionality. You can seamlessly open the terminal and then start making use of kubectl to interact with the cluster. And this is called a smart terminal because the terminal is aware of the Kubernetes version that you are running, the cluster is running on, and then it will configure the right kubectl version. If I run the same command on the Lens LDK, it just shows me the v123. If I have to do this on a traditional terminal, then I have to like create aliases or like set or configure the path so that I can refer to the right version of kubectl when needed. In addition to that, like there are a couple of features I want to showcase is like there are events, so you can just look at all the cluster events that are happening from one place or deploy Helm charts, etc. So Lens opens up like many more other functionalities. So with this, I wanted to like hand it over to Johnathan to talk about Kubescape. And then further, we'll be looking into how Kubescape can be integrated with Lens. So in addition to having this entire end-to-end workflow to troubleshoot the issues, we can also gain additional security features that Kubescape offers.
Great.
With that, Johnathan, you can take over.
Thank you very much, Avinash. Again, thank you for having us here. What we're going to do, I'm going to share a presentation about Kubescape, just to give you guys the context of it. And then Amir will show you a demo how to use Kubescape with Lens and also what you can do with Kubescape in general. So Kubescape is a Kubernetes security open source solution. We launched it to the market exactly 1 year ago. A little bit about us, the company behind Kubescape. We are ARMO, we're based in Israel. We're now 30 people. As I mentioned, Kubescape was launched by the company about 1 year ago and grew very, very fast in the last year. Today, we have more than 6,800 stars already, more than 70,000 downloads from our GitHub page. There is also the Kubescape Cloud version, which is basically the SaaS platform that you can register, and then you have already a hosted managed solution with a nice UI, also data retention, and more capabilities that you can get from there. A little bit about Kubernetes security in general, just to give you guys the context. So I think that it's very clear that today the attack surface of what we're doing, of what we're dealing with, is very wide and it's very open. Throughout the entire CI/CD, you can encounter different types of security issues, and you would like to make sure that you have the right security solution or the right security gate as early as possible, what we call the shift left kind of concept, and as many as possible in order to minimize, on one hand, the attack surface, and also to minimize the chances that you will encounter a security incident during production. And so I will get back to this slide and I'll show you how you can use Kubescape in each one of these places or each one of these gates, as we call them, throughout your CI/CD. So Kubernetes, I'm sure that you guys know, is becoming very, very popular. It's no longer off the radar for attackers, as more and more companies are moving to Kubernetes, are starting to use it as their what we call the operating system to run a critical application, and I think Lens is a great example in that way. Also, the attackers, the hackers that are trying to steal our data, to run malicious software, and basically to do damage, are also becoming more and more interested in Kubernetes and what we have there. And most of the solutions today that are available are not coming with a DevOps type of mindset or DevOps friendly type of way. And I think that this is exactly what we are trying to solve with Kubescape. The top concerns when DevOps and security people are asked when it comes to Kubernetes are either misconfiguration, meaning setup mistake that you can do by mistake, and by doing so you can leave basically penetration points into your environment, or vulnerabilities, bugs in the software that you are using, which also can be used and leveraged by external attackers as a backdoor into your environment. It's important to mention that when we're talking about Kubernetes security, we're talking about basically two things: the security of Kubernetes as a platform, and also the security of what's running inside of Kubernetes, meaning the workloads, the microservices, and how we protect them as well. So let's talk about Kubescape for a few minutes, and then we will move to the demo. So basically, we have at ARMO, we have a mission. And our mission is to build the first of its kind end-to-end open source Kubernetes security platform that will basically answer any Kubernetes security needs from the configuration phase, basically from the moment you write your first YAML line, through the deployment phase, throughout your CI/CD, and also into production. And this is what we're trying to do here. And everything that we do is driven by our open source commitment. Today, what is available from Kubescape, what we can actually get today, what you see here are the cloud version screen, but there is also the CLI version that you can use. Is risk analysis and compliance. We will scan your manifest file, we'll scan your clusters, we will scan your repos, code repositories, we'll scan your container image registries, we'll scan your workload nodes, we'll scan your API servers, and this type of components that you may have, and we'll tell you if you have any misconfiguration, if there are any vulnerabilities. We'll calculate the risk, the security risk accordingly. We'll also show you trends, how you are doing through time, and also help you to be compliant with different type of frameworks that you will probably be required by your security team, like SOC 2, like CIS, like the NSA and other frameworks. All of them are available from Kubescape that you can run against, and basically tell your security team, your CISO, this is how we stand against those frameworks. We also provide an RBAC visualizer, a very useful tool to manage your role-based access control, to ask smart questions, to run inquiries, and to get some useful insights about your RBAC situation, and also to find some violations that you need to pay attention to. We also scan your images for vulnerabilities, what we call CVEs, and we'll show you critical ones, the ones that you need to pay attention to, etc. And you can do that across different types of clouds. You can do that across, of course, on your JKE, AKS, EKS, OpenShift, etc. In order to use the SaaS version, you basically just need to register. You need to put your email name, and you will get into the what we call the SaaS version of the product. You can do that directly from GitHub as well. You can basically run Kubescape in your CLI, submit the data to ARMO, and everything will be visible and available in the SaaS version. In order to use Kubescape, there are basically two options. Either you can install our Kubescape operator inside your cluster, and then you will be able to do also continuous scanning for misconfiguration and vulnerabilities. You can scan triggered by events, by schedule, cron job, etc. Or you can only use what we call the CLI version, which basically is using the kubectl API, but then you'll have limited option and limited capabilities because of what the API is basically enable you to do. But there are two options, just so that you guys will know how to use it. And of course, you can use it from Lens, and this is what we're going to show. So in order to summarize, What basically you can do, you can define and enforce best practices according to different types of frameworks. You can build your own framework. You don't have to use the off-the-shelf one. You can decide which controls you want to run. You can identify and prevent configuration drift continuously along the CI/CD from the YAML, from the moment you write your YAML. We also have an extension to Visual Studio up to the production environment. And you can continuously tighten your Kubernetes environment and minimize the attack surface, meaning close more and more holes and gaps you have that attackers can use and leverage in order to get in. So back to the CI/CD pipeline diagram. So basically with Kubescape, you can put different type of gates. You can scan once when you write your YAML file. You can scan your health charts when you actually write them. You can scan when your code repositories, either GitLab or GitHub. You can scan your container image registries, public or private ones. You can scan during the CD when you deploy. We have also integration to Prometheus and to Grafana. So meaning that you can integrate and embed Kubescape in different places according to your CI/CD in order to maximize the security posture of your environment. With that, it's time to go to our demo. Amir, take it away from here, and I hope everything will go smoothly. It's a live demo, so I'm sure it will.
So quick thing, Amir, so quick thing before we jump into it is there are a couple of questions related to Kubescape. I think it would be nice if you can just take them. So
yeah, I see the question. Can Kubescape be used in bare metal cluster? The answer is yes. You can install Kubescape locally and run it from there using the CLI version of it. Again, it will come with limited options, but definitely you can scan for misconfiguration. You can use the Kubescape operator. So the answer is yes. And everything is available on our GitHub page, and you can see it there. How do you handle automated credential rotation for containerized application without that? This is a question for us or for you, Avinash?
I think it's a general question. So we need like more details on the credentials that you are referring to, because in Kubernetes, like there are different types of credentials used at different places. If you can elaborate on your scenario, we'll be happy to answer them. I think we need more details on the credential rotation that you're referring here.
Perfect.
Okay. Yep. Okay. And one other thing, so there's a Kubescape extension, like the Lens Kubescape extension link I've pasted in the chat. So if anyone is going to try out along with Amir, please feel free to follow along.
Thanks, Avinash. Thanks, Johnathan. I'll share my screen. Okay. So this is our GitHub page for the Lens extension. The link is shared in the chat. And so basically, what I like about Lens is that you don't have to reach to our GitHub page to see how to get the link or to install your extension. You just have the instructions here. But let me go ahead and open up Lens and show you how to install the Kubescape extension. So I'll go to the extensions page. I'll type in at Kubescape Lens extensions and hit the install button. And this basically downloads the npm package of the extension, and it is installed right away. You can see it right here on the sidebar menu. You have right now we have Kubescape. So for this demo, I'm using like a Minikube cluster I installed locally. I deployed Grafana for the sake of this demo. And okay, so let's dive into what the extensions provide us. So as Johnathan explained, the main mission of Kubescape is to detect misconfigurations in your cluster. And here we can see I already ran a scan. I can scan again to show you how quick it is. And basically, it's a pretty much a small cluster. So here we can see the different controls that the Kubescape scanned. A control we can think of as a set of rules. A control is written in Rego language, is a way for us to describe a desired state that we want the resource to be in. And as we can see here in the results, we can see the different controls. For example, allow privilege escalation, and we can click on a specific control. Each control has a severity, it has a status, whether it's failed or passed. We can see down below the controls which are passed. And we can also see the amount of resources which are failed. And my risk score, which is basically the percentage of failed resources versus all of my resources. So let me go ahead and if I choose, let's say the allow privilege escalation control, I can get more information on what this control is talking about, what it's checking, and also some of the remediation information. But usually some controls are more complex, so I'll have a link for the documentation hub, and here I can see like the full information for this specific control. I also have some example for the remediation. In this example, setting the allow privilege escalation to false is the recommended configuration for these resources. So this is the power of Kubescape in Lens. From here, I can also, there is another view for this for these results. If I go ahead, for example, and go to my deployment and click on my Grafana deployment, I can see the different controls that failed for if I'm interested in a specific resource. So for this demo, let's go ahead and fix my Grafana deployment, fix this specific control. I can do it straight from Lens. It's very easy. I'll update my Helm values. I'll set this allow privilege escalation to false. It's saved. And for that, I have to rescan my my cluster. Note that all information is not sent to any backend to our cloud. It's only local. There is a way to do it when you're using the command line tool, but by default, this is not the behavior of the Kubescape command. So let's go ahead and scan. And what I'm expecting to see is that this control will pass. And as we can see, the allow privilege escalation is now in a good state. So this is basically what the extension allows us to see. But let me go ahead and just show you how the command looks like. If I'm running it with Kubescape scan -v, basically it gives me the assistant remediation information. And here we can, if I type in the Grafana, let's go ahead and, okay, so now, so I don't see the control that I fixed because it's passed, but I can also see that I have a few controls on setting the limit on resource, on CPU and memory. And what I really liked about it is it shows you the path in your resource in the YAML that you have to fix, and this saves a lot of time for detecting misconfiguration this way. And one last thing I want to show you is that once you once you scan your cluster, since I have already submitted this cluster to our
only if you decide to submit. You can decide not to submit.
Right. As I said before, like the default is not submitting the result. But if you decide to submit, I already did it, so it remembers my choice. My cluster, the results of this scan will be available on the SaaS version, which this is the link for my cluster. I'll go ahead and open it. So this is how it looks like when I'm opening the UI. As Johnathan mentioned, also the controls are divided into different frameworks. It's really a matter of interest for the developer. So in this case, we have Mitre and NSA. By default, the Lens extension scans all our frameworks. And from here, I can see also a similar view from what I can see from the Lens extension. But if I go ahead and click on this control, you can see that I can see the failed resource. And if I click on this fix button, it shows me right where I need to fix. I can simply copy this, download the YAML, and apply my changes right away on the cluster. And that's about it. If you have any questions.
Yeah, just to mention, guys, that we have almost 100 different controls that are all Kubernetes specific controls. So there are a lot of things that we can check. You decide what you want to check. You don't have to run all of them. You can build your own framework because it could be quite extensive, as you can see. You can exclude some of those controls, decide not to run them if you are okay with this type of issue. Like, I know that Kube system has high privileges, don't test that the next time. There's a lot of things that you can do. We'll not get into that, but just to kind of, the two guys would be aware of.
Yeah, if you are interested to know, like the controls are taken from the regular library, which we update frequently. We can see here an example for a specific control, how it's written and what it checks, and that's about it.
We have a question here, Amir. Is does Kubescape also available for OpenLens?
Sorry.
There is a question from Oren. Does Kubescape also available for OpenLens?
Yeah, so I guess OpenLens is the Linux version, right?
I can answer that. So yes, it is available for OpenLens. So mainly the Kubescape works with the help of Lens API extension, and I believe it is part of OpenLens as well. Starting from Lens 6, there were a few. There is a Lens Pro version as well. I think so. The difference is between Lens Pro and then the OpenLens.
Yeah, I think also one of the developers opened an issue, and he mentioned that OpenLens, he is working with the extension and with OpenLens. Also worth noting is that the compatibility version of the extension is in our GitHub page. For Lens version 6, you have to use the latest version, which is 0.2. And for earlier versions, it's 0.1. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. And there was one anonymous question. Another question from anonymous attendee. In which domain you are thinking to improve it? I think I'm not following that question. If you can elaborate on the context, that would be more helpful.
Maybe it was referring to the. I can say that we're like the next step for the Kubescape extension is to provide also the assistant remediation in a click from the extension. It was something that we planned on doing in the previous version, but Lens, like the integration and the development with the Lens editor, where it opens and shows your object, it's the YAML is, it was not very easy. And I think it was not very much supported, but this is something in our plans going forward.
Last thing that I would like to say, and we mentioned Kubescape is an open source project. We invite everyone to participate, to contribute, to open discussion, to open issues, to raise ideas. We have a very active GitHub page, Discord server, and we encourage everyone to be involved and to help us move Kubescape forward. I think this is it, Avinash, from our side.
Yes, so there are a couple of questions. I think we should be addressing them, and then we should be good. In the meantime, like if there are any other questions, like feel free to post them in the chat. The first question is like how to generate the text report again. Amir, I think
yes,
it's for you in terms of generating that report. If you don't mind, can you show how to generate that report again?
From the question is for the CLI or?
I think he meant the CLI. Like, I
the
think
CLI, yeah, I'll show. Yeah.
Maybe go to the CLI, to the GitHub page and show how to do it.
Okay, so this is basically an intro, but this is the GitHub page for Kubescape. It's Kubescape, and it has instruction here on how to run it. So it's basically the Kubescape scan and Kubescape scan -v. The -v will provide the verbose output, which we saw. This is the output. It's quite long here because I scanned the cluster. So I think that answers the question.
On the GitHub page, you can see all the flags we have and that you can run. And one of them is the verbose mode that basically show you everything.
I also see another question regarding brew. So yeah, so it used to be like installing Kubescape used to be brew install Kubescape, but because of the changes we made with the build of Kubescape, it was impossible to provide that from the home core brew. So right now, in order to install with brew, you have to also the instructions in our GitHub page. You have to use the Kubescape tab, and then brew install Kubescape CLI. So that's for the one who asked regarding brew.
Okay, awesome. Hope that helps, Igor. Thank you for the questions. And a couple of things before we wrap up is, first of all, like, thank you so much, Johnathan and Amir, like for walking us through the Kubescape setup and then how it simplifies the developer workflow by showcasing the security vulnerabilities in the cluster as well as in the deployments that are in there. Thank you so much for going through that. And the next thing is like the Mirantis team is hiring. So if you are interested in joining Team Mirantis, feel free to check out the careers page and then apply using that portal. And we have an upcoming webinar or like the tech talk like next week where we talk about like how to give like developers secure access to Kubernetes clusters using Lens. Please feel free to join us for this particular session and to learn more about like sharing your cluster with colleagues with minimal overhead and without compromising any security. With that, we can wrap up. So what will happen next is you will be receiving an email with all this information, where we'll be uploading the recording to our YouTube playlist. Feel free to check out other tech talks as well in the YouTube playlist. And you'll have the email also have references to these slides, so you have access to these slides. And I'll also include contact details of all of us, like Johnathan's, Amir's, and mine. And you'll have like links to the support portals and the Slack communities. So if you have any questions going forward, you can directly reach out to us using any of these mediums. Like we are like always open on any of these Slack channels or Twitter and many more. With that, thank you so much for everyone like joining me here today. And Johnathan and Amir, it's pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.